Hello and welcome to Runkle of the Bailey. My name is Ian Runkle. I'm a Canadian criminal defense and firearms lawyer. A lot of people have had questions about a TikTok video that's going around. It's being shared in lots of places, and it shows somebody who's at their own home. Police have knocked at the door, and they're now demanding a breath sample. You might think, how does that make any sense? Well, I thought we could go through this. I'll explain the law and what's happening from a legal perspective. I'll also have some comments on how they did in terms of how did they manage this police interaction. So this is also a TikTok video, so it's in portrait mode. Nothing I can do about that. All right, let's have a look.
No worries, man. It's no biggie.
The cops are here. We had to do a breathalyzer test because
You were weaving in and out of traffic.
All right, so let's stop here just with one comment. He had the right idea. I have to do a breath. Yeah, keep your mouth shut. You don't want to say anything. She, on the other hand, has the terrible idea. She's providing additional information. She's throwing him all the way under the bus here. And sometimes this happens where, you get pulled over and you've got a passenger who wants to help out. If you're that passenger, the best thing you can do is keep your mouth shut. You are not the person the police are talking to. Just keep your mouth shut. I'm not sure who this person is in terms of the relationship there, but she's not helping. She's in fact making things a lot worse here, potentially. So let's keep going.
We received a traffic complaint from the OPP.
Oh wait, it's not going. Yeah.
We received a traffic complaint from the OPP, advising of a possible impairment. You're swerving in and out of lanes.
Yep.
So now I'm here to.
That was a bad comment. The yup. Yeah, just don't answer that. Don't respond, don't anything, because that yup might have been meant to be like, okay, I understand what you're saying, but it comes off like, yes, I was, which could have meant that this interaction ends in a ticket. That's not a great place to be. Or perhaps even a charge for dangerous operation of a conveyance or something along those lines. All right, let's go a little further.
Administer an alcohol screening device. So right now I demand that you provide a sample.
Oh, and we're going to back that up just a tad, but here I'm just going to switch us over to having a look at the law itself, because people are saying, how can they demand a breath sample when he's at his house? And so the section that allows for that is right here. This is section 320.27 sub 1. And it says, if a peace officer has reasonable grounds to suspect that a person has alcohol or a drug in their body, and the person has, within the preceding 3 hours, operated a conveyance. Now, conveyance is lots of different kinds of vehicles. It's a car, it's a truck, it's a plane, it's a boat. I think trains are in there. It's all sorts of things. The peace officer may, by demand, require the person comply with a bunch of other things, but that includes to immediately provide the samples of breath that, in the peace officer's opinion, are necessary to enable a proper analysis to be made by means of an approved screening device, and to accompany the peace officer for that purpose. So note here, it's reasonable grounds to suspect that a person has alcohol or drug in their body now, and that the person has, within the previous 3 hours, driven a vehicle. They don't need to find you driving the vehicle. It's just you were driving it within the preceding 3 hours. So this means that if you come home and you drove home, and then you get drunk at home, they can demand a sample from you. That might be a bit of a problem for you because, yeah. So how do they get to the reasonable grounds to suspect? In this case, it's that driving pattern that they're talking about with the weaving in and out of traffic that that woman there, I'm not sure if it's, we only get a really brief glimpse. So I'm not sure if that's mother, girlfriend, whatever, but she's not helping. Now, you might be wondering, why do they let them take a breath sample like within 3 hours after you were driving? Isn't it only illegal to drink and drive? Well, no, the law was changed. This was one of the changes made by Trudeau, and it says something a little different than that. That is right here, operation while impaired. And this is misleading as heck, the operation while impaired, because that's not actually what the law says. So everyone commits an offense who, and we're going to skip over some bits here, but it says, subject to subsection 5 has, within 2 hours after ceasing to operate a conveyance, a blood alcohol concentration that is equal to or exceeds 80 milligrams of alcohol in 100 milliliters of blood within 2 hours after you stop driving. So technically, if you drive home from work and you've had a real rough day at work and you decide you're going to have a glass of something, and then that glass turns into several more glasses and you get smashed within 2 hours, you are initially, at least, committing an offense. So cheers. All right, now, you might be saying, how is that fair? Well, there is an exception. It's a defense, but it's not a great defense, and I'll sort of explain why here. So, exception for alcohol. No person commits an offense under paragraph 1 sub B if A, they consumed alcohol after ceasing to operate the conveyance, B, and remember, conveyance just means some sort of vehicle. It's a very broad term, but B, after ceasing to operate the vehicle, they had no reasonable expectation that they would be required to provide a sample of breath or blood. Now, I don't know how you can ever actually get to that, given that the police are allowed to demand a sample of breath or blood, or a breath rather, if you have, if you've consumed alcohol within 3 hours of driving a vehicle. So I don't know how you could have a reasonable expectation that the police wouldn't do a thing that they're entitled to demand to do. But C, their alcohol consumption is consistent with their blood alcohol concentration as determined in accordance with the breath testing guides, and they're having had, at the time when they were operating the conveyance, a blood alcohol concentration that was less than 80 milligrams of alcohol in 100 milliliters of blood. You might be saying, how do I prove this? Well, you need an expert witness for this. This is a situation where you'd have a physician who can read back essentially what your particular alcohol processing is like, and that is going to cost thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. That's a very expensive thing. So theoretically, you can show, hey, I wasn't drunk when I was driving, I got drunk when I got home. But it's going to be incredibly expensive. So if you don't have oodles of money, if you're not Elon Musk or something, then this might be kind of an illusory exemption for you. And now note, this is kind of a big problem, right? Because lots of people do this without really thinking about it. Lots of people might drive home and then get drunk. Or they might, for instance, drive to a party. I can remember before this law was passed, a party that I went to where I drove to the party and I got smashed pretty quickly. But I'd already made arrangements that I was going to be staying over there. It was not a situation where I was going to be driving home later. It was just, I went there, I had a sensible plan, I wasn't going to be endangering anybody. But I would have been in a lot of trouble if this law had been in effect and if the police had sort of caught up with me. So this is potentially a real big problem. And that's what this guy is facing. Because now the police have information that he's been driving this vehicle within the preceding 2 hours. And so if he blows over, he's going to end up facing charges. And the police are actually quite candid about that, as we'll see here. So let's continue on.
Right now, I demand that you provide a sample of your breath into an approved screening device for proper analysis of that breath to be made, and for you to accompany me for that purposes now. Okay. You understand?
Yeah, I understand.
Okay, so I'll demonstrate it once. I'm going to.
So that demand is a demand with legal effect. If he refuses that sample, he can actually be arrested and charged with offenses, and the penalties are basically the same as if they had proven that he was driving drunk. So that's why that demand sounds that formal. It's because it is a formal demand that triggers legal consequences on this guy. And if at this point he says, whoa, I want to talk to a lawyer, he's not actually entitled to, there's several cases that say that this is kind of an exception to your right to a lawyer, that he's not entitled to delay this by calling a lawyer. Lots of people get themselves in trouble at this point because they say, I'm not blowing until I speak to my lawyer. And they go, okay, well, you've refused. And then they're in some some difficulties. So let's carry on.
Turn the machine on.
Oh my gosh, the police are really here. What the heck is going on here? Do you guys actually need backup for this?
You take one deep. We roll in pairs. So you take a deep breath in, make a tight seal around the tube.
And I mean, the reason why they have multiple officers attending is because, you know, you never know what these calls are going to be. Just recently here in Edmonton, a very tragic scenario. Police were responding to a domestic violence complaint, and 2 officers were killed by a young person who was armed with a firearm. So you never really know. And keep in mind, lots of people might not be happy about what happens here. Especially, you know, if they are that person. Let's say you did have a really rough day at work, and you drove home and then you started drinking because you've been having a real rough time. You might not be thrilled to see the cops at that point. So,
and blow out just like you're blowing up a balloon. So, and then it'll click.
Okay.
It'll stop. It'll think for a minute, and then it says 0 because I don't have any alcohol in my system.
Okay.
Okay? Think you can do that?
Absolutely.
All right.
now you might be wondering, why is the officer doing this demonstration? This has 2 purposes. One, it's going to make it real hard for this guy to come back and say, hey, I didn't know how this worked, because the officer demonstrated it. But 2, it's going to make it real hard if he ends up with if he fails to provide a sample, like if he's unable to, he's going to have a tough time saying, hey, maybe the machine wasn't working, because the officer just tested it out. This officer's like little test here is actually gathering evidence. This is something where he's producing evidence at this point that he could later use at a trial. So this is not just sort of idle stuff.
How you guys doing? Good.
Hey, guys.
No offense, I just want to know, like, do you guys need all these people here?
So he's getting trained by that fellow
I
there.
got you, okay.
And when I show up alone, they always send a second person just in case things go squirrely, right? Because imagine if you were impaired, some people don't want to get arrested, right? It'd be a big fight.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna pop this fresh straw on for you.
Okay.
Yeah, you hear him saying, I'm going to put a fresh straw on. Yeah, that's a good thing, because they'll replace the straw, and properly we can't see it because, you know, the camera's not focused on him, and also the officer's not really narrating his activities too much. He is a little bit, but there's also a step where the officer would look at the straw to make sure that there's no visible obstructions, that there's nothing blocking it. So there'd be that visual inspection step as well.
Are you nervous?
Me? No, I'm not nervous. I already passed my test. All right, my man. So deep breath in, seal, and breathe out. Hard, hard, hard. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Perfect. And it's gonna think for a second, and it says 0. You're golden, man. All right. I'm not sure where the complaint came from. Maybe you were on your phone.
No, I don't. No.
Yeah, that was bait right there. Maybe you were on your phone. Yeah, man, I was. Okay, great. Let me write you a ticket. This officer seems to be, you know, at least fairly pleasant to deal with. That's not always true, but he's got a bit of a sense of humor. I'll appreciate that. But I mean, a lot of us wouldn't like to see an officer showing up at our door like this. So, yeah.
Well, but I'm satisfied that there's no impairment here, so I appreciate you being so cooperative and helpful. Thank you, ma'am. Sorry for giving you a bit of a scare.
Okay.
You guys take care and have a great night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh, good.
All right, so let's talk about what he could have done better there. What could have gone better? First, everybody there needed to keep their mouth shut. And typically, if I'm wanting to talk to the police, I want to do so on my own, if possible. So I don't know. Again, I kind of suspect that was mom. You know, parents, don't help. You're not helping there. So yeah, that was not a helpful comment there. But the other thing is just fundamentally, I don't think I'd have opened my door at all. Hey, it's the police here. Cool. I didn't call you. You should ideally have a way to check who's at your door without opening the door. I've got a method for that. If you don't, then that's something you might want to look into. And unless the police have a warrant, they might not be able to answer, to open the door. They might not, if nobody talks to them, they might have a difficult time establishing who was operating a conveyance. Hey, we got a report of this particular vehicle. We know it's registered here. Oh, look, there's more than one person here. It could have been anybody driving that, until people started talking. We don't know how long before this video starts they were talking to the officers there, but it looks like it was at least some time that there was some discussion. And I'm going to bet that there was an admission of driving made there before the video starts. There's certainly sort of an eyewitness who says, yes, there was driving right immediately during the video. But the police may also just not be able to get into your house if you don't let them in to make that demand. Hey, it's the police at the front door. Cool. I'm going to go have a nap. Now, there are situations where they might be able to get a warrant, in which case they will be entitled to break down your door if they feel like it. That is a possibility. There's other circumstances where they might be entitled to come into your house even without a warrant. And one of those circumstances that's really important in this context is what's called hot pursuit. And what hot pursuit means is that if the officers are actively chasing you, then they may be able to, continue that chase even through the barrier of your door. So you've got to be aware of that, because, if the police see you driving like crazy and you speed off and, because you don't want to get breathalyzed and run into your house and slam the door, that door might not be staying intact for too much longer. So that's an important one here. There's other ones that can apply, like if there's exigent circumstances where they think that somebody inside is in danger. So if there's been a 911 call, for instance, like a 911 hang-up, then the police may have cause to break in and check and see that everyone is okay. So I can't give you a full rundown in this because this is just a YouTube video. If you are in these kinds of circumstances, you might want to call a lawyer. But again, once the officer has made that demand, you don't get to hold off to call a lawyer. I think that that's actually a really bad, that our law is written in a bad way for that one. I personally would like to see it that if you refuse at that sort of initial roadside, or in this case, porch side breathalyzer, that's not an offense, but it does allow them to arrest you and demand one back at the station after you've had a chance to talk to a lawyer. But that would be an improvement to the law, but it's not the way the law is now. I think that this is an area where lots of people would be quite startled to learn the law. We say don't drink and drive, but it's actually more don't drive and then drink. Lots of people would be very surprised to find, these rules. So, and that's even, for instance, if you drive home and then Uber to the bar, your car isn't anywhere near, but it was 2 hours ago. So that's an interesting way to get convicted for something that, in my view, has no moral fault attached to it. It's just purely the way they've written the laws. Anyway, if you have questions about this, leave them in the comments below, or if you have thoughts. I certainly have some thoughts, but yeah, I think that provides a decent explanation of what's happening here. Lots of people on Twitter were saying, I would refuse to provide that sample. If you do, you're getting charged, and you're quite possibly going to get convicted and face fines, possible jail time, and possibly a driving ban that prevents you from driving at all for years. So you might want to rethink that one. Once the officer makes the formal demand, you pretty much, you have to do so unless the demand is invalid. And if the demand is invalid, you probably won't know at that stage. So Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope that this has explained that. Please like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to see more content like this, and thank you all for watching. I also want to thank my Patreon supporters at the $50 level, the CCFR, David Michaud, Canada's National Firearms Association, and the Canadian Shooting Sports Association. At the $30 level, Sights and Arms Limited and Jane Babe and Luxor. And at the $20 level, Lindsay Metcalf, Kyle Fox, Haywire, Gerald to the Bailey, Cameron Johnson, Andrew Elsich, and Vicky. Thank you as well to my $10 supporters who will be in the crawl immediately following. Thank you for watching. I hope this has armed you with knowledge. See you next time.